All right, guys, welcome back to another edition of the Sal Greco Show. This is our third edition, and this is right after Super Tuesday. The results came in. President Trump, he has steamrolled Nikki Haley, and Nikki Haley is now out. She finally got out of the race. It only took, an extra month and a half of wasting time, wasting money. But hey, that's Republican politics, right? So that is a good thing, I think, not only for the party, but for the country. We are going to get a rematch, it appears, of President Joe Biden, the current president. I don't know if he's awake right now. And Donald Trump, the former president of the United States. That was the prior president who Joe Biden allegedly, we'll say he won the election, but we don't know how he won the election. Really, whether you want to say it was fair, stolen, I'm still scratching my head over certain things that happened there. But Joe Biden is your president, unfortunately. And so that's going to be the rematch. As of yesterday, all the primaries are through. I think Joe Biden has plenty of delegates himself. And the talk of Michelle Obama replacing him, Michelle Obama actually came out and said that she is not going to run. I think this is the second time she said this. Andrew Cuomo was subpoenaed by House Committee for COVID response, I believe. So he has to go to Congress. That ought to be fun. I mean, sorry, pal. I mean, I've been through that one before. So good luck with that, Andrew. Big news day on Tuesday. So here we go. I'm going to read some headlines here. So you have New York Post here. Nikki Haley officially drops out of 2024 election, challenges Trump to win back her supporters. Nikki Haley has ended her White House bid, virtually ensuring Donald Trump will be the 2024 Republican nominee, as if that was ever in question. Quote, "The time has come to suspend my campaign. I said I wanted Americans to have their voices heard. I have done that." End quote. Haley said it in a speech Wednesday morning, hours after the last Super Tuesday results were tabulated. The 52-year-old then congratulated Trump, 77, but didn't go as far as to endorse him, instead challenging him to get her supporters on his side. Quote, "It is now up to Donald Trump to earn the votes of those in our party and beyond." Meanwhile, President Biden issued an invitation to Haley's voters to consider joining his campaign. Quote, "Donald Trump made it clear he doesn't want Nikki Haley's supporters. I want to be clear. There is a place for them in my campaign. I know there is a lot we won't agree on, but on the fundamental issues of preserving American democracy, on standing up for the rule of law, on treating each other with decency and dignity and respect, on preserving NATO, and standing up to America's adversaries. I hope and believe we can find common ground," end quote, the Democrat said in a statement. Folks, this is a sad state of somebody who just doesn't know when to quit. Nikki, your time is up. You had a nice little run. You made quite a few bucks. You got your name out there, but you have no plan, no platform. Your only policy is, I'm the other person that's not named Donald Trump. You're not going anywhere. This might have damaged her in the long run, if any future potential run that she wants to have for office for anything else. And I don't know what to say here other than good riddance. I tweeted something out myself. It was a video of Adrian Stallone from Rocky IV telling Rocky, "You can't win." Somebody should have been ordering that to Nikki Haley. I think somebody finally got to her last night and just said, "Time to pack it up." So another story here. We have NYPD employee forced out of job after reporting boss for sitting on her desk, visibly aroused. Bruh. A former NYPD employee claims her boss, who boasted that he was related to Mayor Adams, sexually harassed her by sitting on her desk, visibly aroused, then ran a retaliation campaign and fired her after she reported his boorish behavior. The trouble for one-time Bronx City Council hopeful Latina Brown started soon after she began her $70,000 a year citywide community coordinator post with the NYPD in June 2022, a federal lawsuit alleges. Full disclosure, like I said, Latina Brown is my friend, but I'm going to tell you I have a few problems with the way this article is written, okay? First of all, if you actually read the lawsuit, it's not what it says. It says that Brian Adams claims that he's Mayor Eric Adams' cousin, and head of the city council, Adrienne Adams' cousin. I don't know where Tina Moore, she's a reporter for the New York Post. I don't know where she went to journalist school, or I don't know how she became a journalist. The basic thing you could do integrity-wise is you call, 1, Eric Adams' office, 2, Adrienne Adams' office, which did not happen here, very apparent didn't happen here, and 3, the New York City Police Department or Eddie Caban himself, his office. It appears here that the only person Tina Moore called was Eric Adams. It's intended to be a political hit piece when we shouldn't be playing politics with someone who's legit had an episode and had an event happen to her at the hands of this predator, this sexual predator, Brian Adams, it seems that who's now in a second lawsuit. He has another lawsuit from the NYPD and another sexual harassment case. And also, Brian Adams used to work for the New York Daily News. See how that one ended when he was there. Now, the thing with this Brian Adams is, I don't know if it's nepotism that keeps him on the job, because he has to be related or have some kind of relationship with Adrienne Adams or Eric Adams. I'm hedging my bet on Adrienne Adams because, from what I understand, he is a third cousin of Adrienne Adams. The blood relation's actually to Adrienne Adams. But if that's the case, listen, the NYPD is running a frat house through Eddie Caban, who we know his brother runs this nightclub, Contra Frito, in the Bronx, where all kinds of shenanigans happen there. And, this is like an open frat house environment. The question should be to Eddie Caban, how are you, number one, you did not report this. Why didn't you report this? I'm sure there's phone calls that were either text messages saved, or there's phone calls. There's going to be all kinds of records of this. I think the NYPD has a serious problem here. Brian Adams, I don't know how he has a job still in the NYPD. And disgracefully, this New York Post reporter did not do what she should have done, where she should have called city council, should have asked for Adrienne Adams and posed the same question you posed to Eric Adams to Adrienne Adams. You have to be fair here. I mean, I understand personal feelings aside. I'm not a fan of the swagger man with no plan, Eric Adams, myself. But I'm not going to smear the guy with some ridiculous claim when we don't even know if this person is his cousin or not. And if you are going to pose this question to Eric Adams, you need to pose the same question to Adrienne Adams, because that's in the lawsuit and that's the claim. And we're going to continue on Eric Adams here. Obviously, there's another article here from the Daily News. A woman accusing Mayor Adams of sexually assaulting her decades ago must file a formal complaint in court within 20 days, outlining more details about her shocking claim, the Daily News has learned. The woman, whose name is being withheld by the News, filed a so-called notice of claim in Manhattan Supreme Court in November, saying she intended to sue the mayor for $5 million over allegations that he subjected her to sexual assault, battery, and employment discrimination while they both worked for the City Transit Police Department in 1993. I myself filed a complaint with the Conflict of Interest Board here, and here's the problem with this. The city cannot represent Eric Adams in a sexual assault case because sexual assault does not fall under the scope of duties for a New York City Police Department officer. So that in itself is a problem. I don't know why they're calling her. They're calling her on behalf of the city or behalf of the, we'll say, defendant in this case, which is Eric Adams, because that, trust me, I am all over this. The city should not be using taxpayer dollars for Eric Adams and his alleged behavior as a police officer when it deems to sexual assault, which means that is not in the scope of duties of the NYPD or a cop. I mean, that's clearly not. So the other part of this is, mentions the Guardians. I'm going to give you a quick history with Eric Adams. He was a head of the Transit Guardians. He was the vice president of the Transit Guardians Association. The president of the Guardians of the NYPD at the time was Eric Sanders. He's actually my attorney. Later on, he would become the Grand Master, the Grand Council of the Guardians, Eric Adams. He became the head of that, and that's how they all became one big association, because he wanted to be the head of all those organizations, so he would build his platform. And when he did become the head of the head council, that's where he did the bodyguard work for Mike Tyson, and other Guardian members went there, and they were associating with a known criminal, violating the patrol guide, which they said I actually violated because I'm friends with Roger Stone. So all of this kind of like a boomerang coming back around him. It's it's quite amazing to see. From 1993, this was a law that they used to get Donald Trump. And it's funny how now it's being used against, of all people, Eric Adams. And trust me, we will be looking into this further. If Corporation Counsel represents Eric Adams in this case, like it seems that that's what they're saying, that is a problem. And the taxpayers cannot foot the bill for a police officer who allegedly committed sexual assault in the scope of his duties, whether it's on duty or off duty. We don't know about any previous cases or cases right now that are going on with this, but each time there should be a letter. He needs to request to the law department representation. We want to see this letter. The taxpayers have the right to see this letter, and what the law department, what their rebuttal was to Eric Adams. That's how this procedure goes. I don't know if this was done. I mean, he could have winked and nodded and said he's the mayor. Either way, he's on the hook for this, and the taxpayers have the right to know. Here's another Eric Adams doozy. This is again from the Daily News from March 5th. No indication Mayor Adams is target of criminal probe after the latest FBI raids. Lawyer. An attorney for Mayor Adams said Tuesday there's nothing to suggest he's the target of any criminal probe in the wake of FBI raids at the homes of Winnie Greco, a top City Hall advisor. No, listen, I have no relation to this woman. I don't know who she is. People have asked me. It's just a coincidence she has my last name, unfortunately. Quote, after last week's events, we've had no outreach at all from law enforcement, and we have no indication that the mayor is a target of any pending investigation, end quote. Lisa Zornberg, Adams' chief counsel, told reporters during the mayor's weekly press conference. Zornberg and Adams were otherwise reluctant to offer comment during a briefing about Greco, whose 2 Bronx homes were raided by FBI agents on Thursday. They declined to explain why Greco was just days before the raids added to a list of Adams administration officials who were considered, quote, policymakers. The raids come on the heels of reports that Greco helped host several fundraisers for Adams' 2021 campaign that drew straw donor concerns from city regulators. The city department investigation also launched a probe into Greco last year, following reports that she had made a city hall staffer renovate her kitchen for free while on the municipal government's time. So, folks, what's going on here? I'll explain this to you. I was a cop for 14 years. There's 2 investigations going on at the same time. The problem here is Eric Adams is being investigated by both the Southern District and the Eastern District. Him, his campaign, and people around him, they're not going to come to you and tell you you're a target of this investigation. They're going to wait till the last moment to either A, call you in, or B, handcuff you. That's how this works. So this is all a wink and a nod and smoke and mirrors by him saying he knows I'm not a target, I'm not this, because this guy has a history of talking out of both sides of his mouth. This guy's a con man. I could tell you so many stories about Eric Adams. He's a charmer. I'll tell you one thing. He is in a lot of trouble. And if I was him right now, I would definitely be calling my lawyer and trying to have what's called a proffer with the pre-indictment with either the U.S. District the Eastern District or the Southern District, because this sounds like a mess, and there's many people around them that are right now indicted, and also are right now they're facing a trial. Eric Ulrich is in a trial right now for the straw donor stuff, where other people like Dwayne Montgomery, a former best friend or very close friend of Eric Adams, who said, yeah, I was the head of it. 2 other people copped a plea immediately that were involved in that scheme. So, I mean, this guy has like smoke all around him. And where there's smoke, there's fire. We're going to keep a close eye on this. I mean, I've heard a lot of stuff. Frank Carone, his former head of the campaign manager. Now he's the head fundraiser. Now he's in charge of the legal defense fund he has. Heard some things about him. I mean, he went to Azerbaijan. He took Eric Adams there. It's not a good look, especially with the federal government looking down on you. So we'll see how that one ends. Stay tuned. Here's another one. NYPD officer suspended over body cam video showing him kicking driver who allegedly rammed full speed into a fellow cop. There was an incident. You could see the video. It looks like a cop whether he intended to, mistakenly, whatever it is, stomped on perpetrator's head. Well, he kicked it. John Macari, he tweeted out, there is no standard of investigation or discipline in the NYPD. There was a recent incident where an NYPD lieutenant was modified for stomping on a perpetrator's head after a vehicle pursuit. Imagine if NYPD cops had unions, what they would say. There was an incident a couple weeks ago with a lieutenant from one of these specialized units wearing khaki pants. He punched a perpetrator coming out of a vehicle. The perpetrator had his hands up. He punched him in the face with a gun. As he's on the ground, his officers were trying to handcuff him. He decides to stomp him in the face. It's all caught on camera. The difference is this officer is suspended for something that I don't even know if this person complained or sued or whatever. This other person, he's only modified. The lieutenant's perpetrator, he went to the hospital. I believe he was in a coma. He had facial damage. He was having convulsions when he punched him in the face, after he punched him in the face with a gun. Double standards seem to be the way of the NYPD. So without further ado, I'm going to have my friend, John Macari, co-host of the Finest Unfiltered podcast. And that podcast seems to have a lot of attention from NYPD eyes, we'll say.
Sal, it's an honor to be here. Pleasure to be on your show. I'm glad you finally did this and started a show. I'm sure that, I'm excited to be on here. And yeah, like you said, 18-year lieutenant. I retired over the mandate that Mayor Adams enforced. I stood up on my moral principle and I wouldn't violate my religious beliefs. And with that, I began speaking out. I created a podcast, same as your show. And I've been basically just giving my opinion, my honest, heartfelt opinion as a lifelong New Yorker, as a member of a former member of the NYPD. And it's not well liked by the NYPD.
I also noticed a lot of things, John, when you post things, certain people get irked. We'll say NYPD personnel wise. That I think chief of department, I've noticed this deputy commissioner, whatever, Kaz Daughtry, another guy. These guys seem to almost directly respond to you. And you just have a podcast, John. It's not like you don't have any you're not on any legislative branch of government where you could actually affect what they're doing. Am I right?
Basically, if you listen to everything they say, everything's about perception. Oh, we're trying to change New Yorkers' perception. It's never about the reality of it. So someone like myself who has institutional knowledge of the NYPD knows how policy and legislation affect public safety. And for me to go out there in the world and talk about it and awaken people to the failures of this progressive government, that's one rule that's happening, is one rule of progressive body that controls New York State and the legislation, to wake people up to that fact. Not only conservatives, but Democrats, people on the left, they wake up, they're like, oh wow, that kind of makes sense. And and I'm a thorn in the side, basically, just for giving my opinion and speaking what I believe to be the truth.
I see it your way because I see the reactions online from these people, and some of them are crazy, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Everyone, first get your thoughts on yesterday was Super Tuesday. What are your thoughts? Trump not only steamrolled his opponent, she quit today. She finally threw the towel in.
I wish she would have came out and actually endorsed President Trump and said that she stands behind him. I mean, and again, I believe that's a failure in the GOP to stand behind these candidates and put up people that are going to stay true to who they are and what they say that they believe in, and the legislation that they say they're going to pass. But I'm glad. I mean, Trump's been the clear-cut winner for months now. We've known it. I mean, the only other person that I thought even had somewhat of a shot would have been Ron DeSantis, and Trump wiped the floor with him. He couldn't even win Florida, So I'm glad that there's a clear-cut winner, and we could get on with this and get ahead of making America great again.
What do you think his prospects are? I mean, we're both New York guys. Do you see New York voting for Trump? Does Trump have any shot in New York?
It's funny, man. I lived in New York City my whole life, and basically everybody I know voted for Donald Trump in the last election. I know people that are two-time Bill de Blasio voters, if you could believe this, but they voted for Donald Trump in the last election. And I believe that it's not likely for him to win it, but he has tremendous support in New York, much more than people from the outside looking in could ever know. There was lines of everywhere I went. There were Trump flags, Trump shirts. And again, like I said, everybody I know voted for him. And I know thousands and thousands of people in New York. And they're from all sides, all faiths, all parties. Everyone voted for. I even had people that believed him to be anti-Muslim, that are Muslims of Muslim faith, and they called me and told me, "Yeah, no, I voted for Trump. There's no way I could in good conscience vote for Joe Biden." So I believe that since that time, he's picked up even more steam. So it's going to be interesting.
He's gaining. That's what you would think he's gaining right now.
Absolutely.
That's a good thing. I've been in New York, and there's a rumor that he's gonna have a rally there in the Bronx. I don't know if it's gonna happen or not. I keep hearing that he wants to have this rally. That would kind of put the Democrats in a position where they have to defend the territory they haven't defended since 1992, I believe. That's the last time. 92 was the first time I think New York went blue and has never gone red ever since. So George Bush, I believe, is the last person to win it in 88 as a Republican. So with that being said, that's a long time. So if he comes out with a rally and says, I want to rally in, New York, I think it's a good thing, because whether or not it goes through, it forces them to put money somewhere where they would put their money into some other resources. So I think it's a good thing. So you actually think there's a chance here of somehow New York going?
Listen, I think the chance is slight, but I think that he's going to get the most support you've ever seen of a Republican candidate in a very long time, without a doubt. And I'm hoping and praying that he does go through with these rallies in Yankee Stadium and MSG. I would love to attend. I would love to be there. I would love to see the feeling, and the world should see how much support he actually has. Not in New York, and especially in New York City, amongst everyone of all races, faiths. People are tired of what's going on, and especially in New York City, people feel like they haven't been told the truth a long time. And people always, oh, Trump's brash, he's this. But one thing everyone says about Trump, he's not a liar. He tells you how it is, and you got to respect that.
That we agree on. So, what do you think nationally? You think does Trump come November? We see how he's being politically persecuted in New York. You see how he's being politically persecuted in DC, and then this case in Florida and Georgia that's falling apart with these two prosecutors that are in love with each other, taking money from the state and wherever else they were doing. What do you think with that? Do you think what do you think going forward with the prospects of his national outlook? Does he pull this through despite all the, we'll say, prosecutions?
Without a doubt. I mean, these are frivolous political prosecutions. They're failing at every step. They are getting him where it hurts civilly, financially. They're hurting him, but even that is financial. It's political prosecution. These DAs should be investigated on their own by the DOJ. To even say that, to even for Letitia James, let's just take for example, to even say that Mar-a-Lago is valued at $80 million, she shouldn't even be in the realm of have any professional authority whatsoever. I mean, because it's just so far from the truth. It's insane. And to go after someone for all of these things with drummed up criminal charges, this is Stasi style, 1930 style, Stalin style prosecution. It's like, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. And we're wasting all these resources to go after political opposition to the Democratic Party. They're going to fail at every turn. And like he said, every time I get indicted, I go up in the poll numbers. And that's exactly what's happening. America's waking up. This is, we're going back to our founding.
Much of his persecution, his political persecution, as these bogus indictments, there's not really much substance to any of this. It's more of a far reach. You and I have been through that because we could have done that to many people in the past. I know how to do it. I haven't done it. I've seen other officers pull this off, and I'm not for it. I don't think an overreach or trying to say, somebody spit on the ground, so we're going to say, oh, he trespassed. I mean, you could do many different views angles of how to do that, But you did also mention, because we're going back to New York, because you're saying how New York is corrupt and all of that. I just read yesterday that Eric Adams was being sued by a woman for sexual assault. Now, if I don't know if you remember this, John, I remember I filed from the Conflict of Interest Board to try to get this letter that Eric Adams would have had to give into the law department stating, I need representation, although I assaulted a woman sexually on duty, which does not fall into the scope of the duties of the NYPD. Now, the head of the Corporation Counsel, I believe is Hinnick's her name is, she called the lawyer or she demanded the paperwork. Now, I don't know if she's acting as the city, the head of the city, because that's who she's suing, or is she defending Eric Adams? I believe Eric Adams' lawyer should be doing that. So, what is your take on this? This is a blurred line. I don't know if he's having representation through the city, which is illegal, or is it she's representing the city and he's got his own lawyer? I don't know what's going on here to be like precise about that whole scenario.
Yeah, one, I'll say they extended the statute of limitations to go after. This was another attack on Donald Trump, by the way. They did this to go after Donald Trump, to open up cases on him so that he could be sued civilly if somebody came out of the woodworks from years and years ago. And Eric Adams supported that. I was totally against it because I said, hey, this is you're using this to go after Donald Trump. And it came back to slap him in the face, right? Now we're seeing it's happening to him. But 100%, this has nothing to do with the taxpayers of New York City. New York City taxpayers should not be liable for any of this. This is a personal allegation that when Eric Adams was employed as a member of the NYPD, he had unwanted sexual contact with a coworker. That is not covered. That's not the scope of your duties. That doesn't fall under qualified immunity. So there's no way that New York City should have to foot the bill. Eric Adams should have to foot his own bill. And this is it's an absolute travesty that a mayor would even think that the taxpayers should be liable to support this case. Now, whatever it is, I don't know the woman and I don't know the story. I like I said, I didn't support the law, but he did, and now it's coming back to bite him. And I'm fully against New York City supporting him. I still pay taxes there. I don't want my money to go towards his own personal actions.
Yeah, so then that would basically mean it's a misuse of taxpayer funds, what he's doing by trying to appropriate the law department to defend him in a case where clearly the city will never, the default position is we don't represent officers in sexual assault cases because it's not in the scope of your duties. So even if this happened in 1993, we'll say, how are they representing Eric Adams? Because this is a sexual assault case. That would mean they indemnified him? Is that right, John? I mean, that's how we would read it, right?
If Corporation Counsel is going to represent him, that means that he's being indemnified by New York City. That means that the taxpayers not only are paying for his legal defense, but any settlement that arises out of that. I mean, it's a complete travesty. It's a complete misuse of taxpayers' fund. 1,000%. They are falling under what police officers have, what's known as qualified immunity, when you actually go to a job and perform in the scope of your duties, that you're protected by the state, which is common sense. But this is completely not common sense. And we're seeing if this is the case, I mean, this would mean that anytime a police officer has anything, a fist fight with their neighbor, a drunken car accident, that New York City should represent them. I mean, I don't think anybody supports that.
Yeah, this is exactly what my problem with this. This is why I filed maybe I need to file something in the future, because this right here, if this goes forward, the taxpayers need to know why they are representing Eric Adams. I don't know how he's being indemnified for a sexual assault. See, this is more important than, let's say, this other case I'm about to get to. And, again, full disclosure, this is a friend of ours, Latina Brown, because New York Post printed an article about this Brian Adams, who somehow is still employed in community outreach, or community director of the NYPD, and he was sexually harassing Latina Brown. He's also in another lawsuit, but yet, we read the article and it said that he's a cousin of Eric Adams. So then they call Eric Adams, but in the actual lawsuit, if anybody, especially Tina Moore, took the time to read it, you'd say that he himself boasts that he's Eric Adams and Adrienne Adams, the head of city council's cousin. Why was there no phone call to Adrienne Adams? Why does he still have a job? These are things that you ask. I don't know. The same police commissioner, Ed Caban, was in this lawsuit that is, I believe it's like a frat house he's running in the NYPD. What are your thoughts on that article and that whole situation?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Adrian Adams was completely left out of that article, which it shouldn't have been, because through my sources, I've been told that he literally brags about being first cousins with Adrian Adams,
Okay.
um, and that he is related to the New York City Mayor Eric Adams. I believe those are important because I believe it shows the nepotism in the NYPD. I believe that he shouldn't even be in that position to begin with. Why was he given that position? What were his qualifications? And of course, I mean, I support Latina Brown, and I believe in fair and due process for everybody. However, when there are allegations such of this nature, and like you said, there's other stuff going on, I mean, people have to be sidelined. They should be questions. I mean, if this was a police uniformed supervisor, he would be basically removed from supervising women. They would have him somewhere else. He would have been removed while these investigations happen. Now, if he gets cleared of that at the end, yeah, he would go back. But while the investigations are going on, he shouldn't be around other women at this point. I believe, I mean, that's the safety of not only women in the NYPD, but protecting the New York City taxpayers too. That you're not employing someone who's going to cost the city money in lawsuits, who's going to act irrationally on behalf of New York City. I mean, so there's a lot of things there, and you see that again, the nepotism, that he's still in this high-ranking spot, that he's still supervising all these people while he's under investigation. It's a big problem. I mean, in New York City, teachers, right? What do they do to them? They take them out. They put them in the rubber room, right? What do they do to cops? They remove you from your assignment. They take your gun. They take your badge. And they remove you out of that thing while your investigation's happening. But being a politically affiliated, high-ranking civilian, none of that's happening. He's just basically acting with impunity while his investigation goes on, exposing the New York City taxpayer and exposing other women in the New York City Police Department.
So so in the lawsuit, when it says that Latina calls Eddie Caban and Eddie Caban just does nothing, isn't that now he himself should be firing himself? No, because I believe that's you failed to do your basic duty as a supervisor. Am I correct?
Any supervisor in the NYPD is a mandated reporter. It's under equal opportunity law in New York State, and I believe even federally, you're a mandated reporter. Anytime that you are notified about such an act, you will report it. Now, Latina says that she called Police Commissioner Edward Caban. He knew full well aware about it, and he did not spark an investigation of it. Now, obviously, he would be the final say after the investigation. He wouldn't investigate it himself. The Office of Equal Opportunity, or what do they call themselves now? The NYPD Equity, who oversees that, the Commissioner of Equity and Inclusion, would oversee that investigation, and then the investigation would be brought to him, and he would then determine, is this the facts of that investigation, and this person should be fired, or what should happen to him as a result of that investigation, or if anything at all. But he didn't even spark the investigation, which is shows the integrity right there in the New York City Police Department. I mean, that is a scary, scary thing. If the guy that's running the largest department in the world, the most storied institution in the world, doesn't have the integrity enough to, when he becomes aware of an allegation, to ensure that there's an investigation after that.
Yeah, but we have our own. I have my own issues with Ed Caban, who clearly here is failure of his personal duties. But that would go into the next thing I was going to ask you about, which is well known, and this is an article that was from a few weeks ago from the Daily News. Bronx eatery popular with Mayor Adams to shutter after court feud over illegal party room. Con Sofrito, a low-key Bronx restaurant popular with Mayor Adams and NYPD officials, has agreed to shut down this summer as part of a bitter court battle over an illegal party room operated on the premises, records reveal. The Puerto Rican eatery, located in a remote industrial section of Westchester Square, is owned by Richard Caban, the brother of NYPD Commissioner Edward Caban. The establishment has, for the past few years, gained a reputation as a hangout for Adams, who celebrated his birthday there last year. Other high-profile elected leaders, including State Assembly Leader Carl Hastie, as well as top NYPD brass, including Commissioner Caban and Chief of Department Jeffrey Madry.
And I'm always up in the BX at Jimmy's spot, up in the BX, doing a cigar and a Tito's with salsa and a good meal. So just being able to enjoy this amazing city.
What are your thoughts about all this? Because obviously you got looped in, and you could tell the audience exactly how you got looped into this somehow. So, what are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, sure. A few articles came out from Joe Hoft. He started reporting on Concefritos, on Jimmy Rodriguez's criminal past and his associations with the New York City police commissioner, Edward Caban, New York City mayor, as well as all other high-ranking officials in the NYPD. So I had Sal come on the show, myself and Eric Dim, and we talked about the hypocrisy of the NYPD having parties at this place when they fired Sal Greco for criminal association. And they're openly, knowingly associating with a known criminal, and in a place where there's numerous allegations against it that criminal activity is happening, which would never happen in the past. So we discussed department policy on that, what would happen in the past, why we believe it's not happening there. And prior to not this article, but a city article had dropped a few weeks after we did that show. Nothing really came in that show. We spoke about it. We spoke about the hypocrisy, and I think we just went into that. The Yankees was smart enough to tell their players that they could not associate with that place, but the New York City Police Department obviously was not smart enough to tell that that police officers should not associate at that place. And then we spoke about the hypocrisy of you being fired for the thing that they're doing, and actually what they're doing is absolutely much worse than what they accused you of. They accused you of hanging out with a political consultant, Roger Stone, who has a full official pardon from the 45th president of the United States. They're actually knowingly and openly hanging out in a place where there's criminal activity going on, and with a known criminal who isn't a criminal of some crazy political witch hunt. This is a criminal with drugs, murders involved. We've had mafia podcasters talking about how he was directly involved in setting up a hit. Crazy things that any person with common sense would say, anyone in the New York City Police Department should be nowhere around this place or this individual. So then an article drops in the city a few weeks after we do that show. And that night I get on my Instagram, I get tagged in every business entity from Jimmy Rodriguez, Concefrito. Now, for just a backstory, I didn't just do the show with Sal. I didn't just do the show by myself. Sal was there, Eric was there, but I was the only person targeted in his post where he puts a song of vengeance. And he later tells me, "Oh, you're gonna see me real soon. You're gonna get to know me real soon," making a direct threat against myself. Didn't say for what. I reached out to him. He wouldn't respond. And I just found it very funny. I'm a well-known critic of New York City mayor and of the New York City Police Department for openly giving my opinion. And he only came directly after me. So it had absolutely nothing to do with that show, in my opinion, that we did prior. Someone had to have told him, hey, this guy is the reason your business got closed down. Who else could I think that be but New York City Police Commissioner and the New York Police Department Police Commissioner Edward Caban? I mean, it's the only thing that makes sense. And I said, hey, don't threaten me. I have nothing to do with the fact that you and the police commissioner's brother obviously can't run your own business. I didn't file a complaint against them. I never been to their establishment. I know nothing about it. The only time I've ever spoken about it was on that show. So I found it very funny. And again, it just shows the lack of integrity in the leadership in the New York City Police Department and in New York City as a whole.
John, I was stunned when I saw that online. And when I saw the post, I saw that Jimmy Rodriguez actually tagged. If you would tell me we were in high school, I could understand that behavior. But even seeing that now and knowing the things that we know about being a mob associate, you're borderline, you could get picked up for this stuff. And in fact, John, did you not file a complaint with Internal Affairs in regards to not only his threat, but multiple threats from other members of service of the NYPD, active members right now?
Well, I actually filed a criminal complaint against Jimmy Rodriguez, and then I filed, on top of that, I filed an Internal Affairs complaint because at the same time this was going on, I was receiving a campaign, like a total slanderous campaign, defamation of character from Chief of Patrol John Shell and Deputy Commissioner of Operation Kaz Daughtry's #1 team, it's called the Citywide Response Team. I had the captain, 2 lieutenants, sergeants, numerous detectives and cops, all at one time coming onto a post where I invited Chief John Shell to come on the podcast, slandering me, saying absolutely ridiculous things about myself, threatening myself and Eric Dim, talking about our wives. And while that's going on, I mean, we have the Deputy Commissioner of Operations up on stage talking about there's a handful of retired guys out of state who want to be part of the dream team. He's talking about myself, you, Eric, and it's absolutely completely unprofessional. And it follows up with unknown attacks, unknown handles on Instagram, actually sending pictures of little children. Like I have two daughters and about the same age. The pictures were not my daughters, but they were two little girls saying, "Oh, you have a beautiful family. I hope they live a long life." Received threats like that from active members of the NYPD. So I filed an internal affairs complaint, but internal affairs is absolutely unwilling to, and I don't even believe they have the ability to properly investigate the allegations I've made, because again, they're against the New York City mayor and the NYPD police commissioner and every high-ranking official in the NYPD and their supposed dream team, the number one. So what we see is these people have favoritism, and I'm sure we'll go into how much favoritism they had, because one of the people that actually was taking part in this campaign, the lieutenant, he gets caught up in a video a few weeks ago.
That's right. So we segue into that one. So yesterday I saw the post that you had on Twitter. I told the audience, and there was the article written, and this cop was suspended basically for, I guess, I watched the video. He kicked this guy in the head, whether it's intentional, unintentional. You could make up your own decision and make up your own mind on that. But he was suspended for this incident. Yet the incident involving the lieutenant that you're speaking about, he punched the guy in the face with a gun. The guy went into convulsions, lands on the ground. His officer trying to put his hands behind his back. He's literally having convulsions. And what does he do? Stomp on his face. Now, he's only modified. This other officer suspended. How is that, John? And I mean, you even tweeted it out. You actually posted the video. I mean, I'm concerned over this kind of behavior.
Yeah, I mean, first, like just going back to the complaint real quick, if IB would have taken this complaint seriously, and I believe you had said this prior, I mean, I don't believe that this person should have been on the street. They should have been investigated. And we said, if this is what they're going to do to retired members of the service speaking their mind, imagine what they'll do to people on New York City streets. So we get the video of this lieutenant stomping on someone's head, and you literally can hear the crack of the guy's head. And mind you, the guy ran from the police. I was involved in plenty of scuffles. You were involved in scuffles. Eric was involved in scuffles. But there is no way that I'll ever support anybody being face down on the floor with police officers on top of them and a cop coming over to penalize them and kick them in the head or punch them in the face. I mean, you have to be a professional at all times, you know? And so this lieutenant that stomped on this guy's head and sent this guy into convulsions, and he was actually in a coma for 2 days before he got released from the hospital, and it's well on the video, he gets modified. And what that means is basically they take his gun and his shield while the investigation happens. Right. So they're erring on the side of caution, but I don't believe he's transferred. I believe he's still in his unit. He's probably still making overtime. If I was a betting man, I would bet that he's still getting overtime when we know other officers would never get overtime in that situation while this investigation pans out. And then yesterday we get another video of the female that drove over the cop. She actually ran over a cop, a BLM activist. Cop was trying to stop her from going the wrong way, and she actually ran him over. Real piece of garbage. I hope she goes to jail for a long time. But while she was on the floor, you see she's on the floor handcuffed. You see a cop come over in anger. It appears to be in anger. I don't see his face, but I see his foot, like the side of his foot. It appears to me that he kicks her, but it's a weak kick. It's kind of like and again, I don't support that. But this officer's suspended. And what suspended means is we remove your gun, we remove your shield, and we remove your salary and your health benefits. So I don't believe that kick is so hard. I don't believe it's a becoming of a police officer. I believe that there's discipline that should happen because of that kick. But obviously, the New York City Police Department thinks that that's actions be unbecoming of a police officer, and they believe that he did violently kick her, or else they wouldn't have suspended him. So what's the standard here? We're seeing there's no standard. There's no standard in investigation, and there's no standard later on in discipline. Rules apply to some New York City police officers, and rules do not apply to others. That's what we're seeing.
I'm in agreement, John. I watch your show all the time. I obviously I'm all over to your X feed. I see you point out hypocrisy and criminality that is done by this upper echelon, the NYPD, like we stated with Eddie Caban, who very much is involved in that concert frito, him and his brother. And they allow certain things to happen, whereas in other instances like this, they give certain people a pass. And you can't, you're running a huge organization like this, and that shouldn't be the case. And this really falls on the shoulders of also the best dressed mayor since Jimmy Walker, the most corrupt mayor since William O'Dwyer, and the most incompetent mayor since Bill de Blasio, one Eric L. Adams. That's just the bottom line here. And this is alarming. What I'm going to actually see what happens with these cases. This is absurd things that I'm hearing. But anybody, tell people how they could follow you or where they could check out the podcast.
Sure, I use my own name for everything at John D. Macari, Macari, and then the podcast I do with Eric Dim is The Finest Unfiltered. We're on YouTube, we're on Rumble at The Finest Unfiltered. We're also on Apple, Spotify, anywhere where audio podcasts are available. And the full name of the podcast is New York's Finest Retired and Unfiltered Podcast. www.thefinestunfiltered.com. Sal, it's always a pleasure. We're going to keep doing this, and it's a pleasure to be on here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, John, and folks. I highly suggest, whether you like the police, you don't like the police, follow John, look at everything he does, watch his shows, watch the previous shows. He's had many different guests on. I mean, he had Edwin, what's his name? Raymond. He was a cop that was very political. I would say he's more of on a socialist side than he is on anything else. He was on his show. John's had plenty of controversial people on his show. Hey, call my stuff controversial if you want. He had Roger Stone on his show. So he has, his show is very informative. Him and Eric break down the daily routine of the NYPD and whatever's going on. I highly recommend you go there. John, thanks for coming on. It's been an honor to have you on. And I wish you the best in the future. And on to the next one. Hope to see you on here soon.
Absolutely, bro. We'll do it again.
All right. Thank you, John Macari, for coming on here. That was a great interview there. John was always very insightful. And let me tell you something. You guys really should follow John Macari on X. He posts a lot of stuff, whether it's in New York, Florida, countrywide, nationwide, especially law enforcement related. Great stuff. His show is excellent. I highly recommend going on there. And like I said, John Macari, good friend of mine. And folks should be paying attention to him. I think he's a rising star, so to speak. With that being said, that's the end of our show today. So, guys, if you like this, click subscribe button there on YouTube. Hit the like button. Share this on anything you can, different platforms. Send it to your friends. Spread the word far and wide. We're trying to grow this audience, And like I said, today was a little bit different than the other shows where, you had a mix of politics, law enforcement. I mean, I was a law enforcement guy. So people need to hear a little bit of everything. We can't just keep beating the same drum over and over again, so to speak. So with that being said, guys, please click the subscribe button, hit the likes, share it, spread the word. If you want to follow me on X, it's at the Sal Greco. On Instagram, at the Sal Greco. Same could be said different on Truth Social. Truth Social is at head of the table. And with that being said, that's another episode on the wraps, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a very, very good day.